Tony Bellew versus Mateusz Masternak. I was initially disappointed when this fight was announced. I think I posted a video that was titled something like, "You've got to be kidding me, Bellew versus Masternak." Now I think some people who maybe didn't watch that video, just saw the title, commented, that this was a real fight, expect it to be close. People thought I was being dismissive of Masternak. On the contrary, that's not what I meant whatsoever. The way Bellew and Hearn were talking this fight up, I presumed it was going to be against a household name. I presumed it was going to be a real A-grade fight that would create huge excitement. Now, Mateusz Masternak may be a very decent fighter. What he isn't is a celebrity boxer or a celebrity name who's going to drive mass appeal to this card. So that's why I posted that video saying you've got to be kidding me. Nothing to do with Masternak's technical capabilities as a boxer, more the hype that Eddie Hearn and Tony Bellew were giving this fight, which surprised me, when the opponent was announced. As for the fight itself, Mateusz Masternak versus Tony Bellew, I see this as a legitimate 50-50 fight. I'm actually struggling to pick a winner here. I really am. Let me tell you why. Bellew, there's a lot of talk about his transition to cruiserweight and how it's been good for him. I'm actually not so sure. Don't get me wrong, I agree that Bellew probably was too big for the 175-pound light heavyweight division. And I guess, bearing that in mind, the cruiserweight division is the only option for him. I don't dispute that. My concern is, all this talk about him being a big cruiserweight, I think that cruiserweight has allowed Tony Bellew to not be rigorously disciplined. It's not about being body beautiful. It's not about having a six-pack. Not every boxer can look like Anthony Joshua. But, Tony Bellew is not a well-conditioned athlete. There are times when Tony Bellew is standing on the scales and, speaking frankly, it's not a pretty sight. He is not 200 pound of functional mass. He's carrying a good bit of weight on him. Not that that's the be-all and end-all, but I have a concern how that will affect Bellew in an honestly fought 12-round fight at cruiserweight against a decent opponent. Because, let's be honest, the only 12-round fight Tony Bellew's had at cruiserweight against a decent opponent was Nathan Cleverly. Now, I'm a Nathan Cleverly fan, but Nathan Cleverly didn't fight for the last half of that fight. He barely threw a punch the last 2 or 3 rounds. That didn't necessarily ask the questions of Bellew's stamina in the same sense, because the action wasn't there. Now, Bellew taught, he's got that famous statement, he carries power. I don't see Bellew as a big puncher at all. And Mateusz Masternak, if you look at his record, I know he's been stopped, but his record suggests durability to me. He's a decent size at the weight. I think he's 28 years old, so he's in his prime. He's gone the distance. He's gone late in fights, before, and he's been in against decent opposition. I don't think this is the kind of guy Bellew's going to be able to blow over. I don't. I think this fight will go late. I'm not saying either the distance or, 10 rounds, 11 rounds, 12 rounds. And then I think Bellew's conditioning, that hasn't actually been properly tested at cruiserweight against a decent opponent over a 12 round, I think that's really going to come into play. Masternak, he's the younger man. From what I've seen of him in previous fights I've watched, he's probably going to be in better physical shape than Tony Bellew. And I don't rule that out from being a factor. As for Tony Bellew, since he's made the transition to cruiserweight, I have severe concerns about the guy's defence. The Nathan Cleverly fight, you have to give Nathan Cleverly a lot of the early rounds in the fight. And I think it actually went to a split decision, if I remember correctly, which shows how effective some of the judges thought Cleverly was in that fight. But, Cleverly lost the fight, by the way. I'm not disputing that. But the reason he was able to take rounds of Tony Bellew was, put simply, that Cleverly showed that Tony Bellew still didn't know at this stage of his professional career how to block a jab. And Bellew's defence is really questionable. Really open defence. I think the other thing to factor in is his inaccuracy. That's what I think of when I think of Tony Bellew. And I know this sounds harsh, but I think out of condition, open defensively, and inaccurate. He's a solid enough operator, you know. There's nothing in Tony Bellew's game that I view as exceptional, but he's a solid enough operator. And I know he's got this amateur pedigree, and people say that he can box if you look back at some of his previous performances. I'm not so sure. I think the Tony Bellew who turns up 9 times out of 10 is a guy who swings a bit wildly and leaves himself open. And I think the superior boxer is able to defeat him, you know. Nathan Cleverly, in my estimation, should have won that fight easily. Easily. You know, Cleverly just seemed to have all the attributes to beat him, but for some reason didn't throw enough lever, got tired, got worn down at the weight, and it ended up being a poor performance from both men, which Bellew deserved to win. Masternak, you know, some of the things in his record, if you look at his performance against Grigory Drozd, I think is the guy's name, I mean, even recently, I know John Mark Mormek is a very faded guy at the end of his career, but you know, he did well against John Mark Mormek. He won that fight. He lost against Grigory Drozd, but performed with credit there. There's some other good bits and pieces of form. Now, I've seen him fight live 2 or 3 times on TV, and I've also rewatched some of the tapes here. And you know, Masternak is another guy. He doesn't do anything too exceptional. If you look at his record, it does indicate power, but I don't think he's a huge puncher. I'd say the punch power is probably a similar level between the two. But Masternak seems to have the fundamentals thereabouts. I mean, like Tony Bellew, I'm not going to say he's Floyd Mayweather accuracy. I'm not going to say he's a defensive wizard. But he's got the fundamentals, Masternak. He's tough, he's strong at the weight, and you know, he's a decent operator at cruiserweight. He really is a decent operator. Now let's put it this way. The only concern I have about Masternak is clearly he's being brought in as an opponent. Clearly Eddie Hearn has picked up the phone and rung his people on the assumption that Mateusz Masternak will turn up and Tony Bellew will beat him. Nothing more complicated than that. Now, I wonder if Masternak is getting to that point of his career. You know, he's had 1 or 2 losses. He had the loss to Grigory Drozd. He's had a more recent loss. I wonder if he is at the stage of his career where he has got to that world title level competitor, come up a bit short, and is now looking for paydays. You know, I don't know Mateusz Masternak. I've never spoken to him. I don't know his story. I just speculate watching this because, you know, he's being the away fighter here. He's come up a bit short against the top level guy in his division. Is he being inclined to turn up for the payday rather than having another crack at it? I don't know. And that is the real concern in this fight. Because for Bellew, this is must win. This is must win for Bellew. Whereas if Mateusz Masternak is even starting to come into that opponent mentality, then you'd want to be with Tony Bellew. But I'm going to take a risk. And I'm going to predict Mateusz Masternak to win this fight. And it's actually a good enough fight. You know, it's a close fight. Again, my scepticism was purely because they were talking it up like it was Marco Huck or Roy Jones Jr. or some big name. But it's actually a competitive fight, this. And I'm going to tip Masternak to win here. I just see Bellew as quite an overrated fighter. People talk about this technical side to his game. People talk about this amateur pedigree. But I see a guy who makes rookie errors. I see a guy who's wildly inaccurate. I see a guy whose defence is really, really open. And I'm not sure about his chin. I'm not convinced about his power. And I'm not still convinced about him at cruiserweight, as crazy as that sounds. I think Bellew's there to be beaten. And Masternak is just on the cusp of the kind of guy who's going to turn up and do it, you know. As I've said previously, I'd pick any of the cruiserweight world champions to beat Bellew. Masternak's a level below that, but I also believe that Tony Bellew's a level below that. And I just think Masternak can pull the upset here. It's a risky prediction. Bellew's the safe money because Bellew's the home fighter. You know, Bellew can't afford to lose this fight. Whereas Masternak, I think he won last time out, but if I'm right, he lost the time before that. You know, He's had 1 or 2 losses recently. I think he's had 3 in total. And you sense that the momentum's with Bellew. But this is a big stage for Masternak. This is his chance back into the limelight of the cruiserweight division. And I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to gamble that he is motivated and that he's turning up to give it his all. And I'm going to pick Mateusz Masternak to win here. I see this as a 50-50 fight where I'd slightly lean to Masternak. Let's just shift quickly into boxing gambling, boxing betting chat. I know some people like that, some people don't. Just had a quick look at the prices before making this video. Mateusz Masternak is currently available at 3.5 to 1, 7 to 2 for this fight. I think that's a crazy price. A crazy price. You know, what they are suggesting is that if this fight happened 9 times, Mateusz Masternak would win 2. I think they're wrong there. I think Bellew's beatable, and I think Mateusz Masternak has the capability of getting the win. I think 7 to 2 offers value, and I will defend that statement even if Bellew goes out and destroys Mateusz Masternak. Because based on what we know at this point, based on the flaws that we've seen in Bellew, and based on what we know of Masternak, I see this as a really, really tight fight. You know, I could see it evens both ways here. 7 to 2, too much value to turn down. I'll be taking those odds, and, you know, I'll be picking Mateusz Masternak for the win here. Let me know your thoughts. If you've enjoyed this preview, give me the thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. I'm going to cover some of the other fights on the card, so do subscribe to the channel. I wouldn't want you to miss out on them. Many thanks for watching.